The message of the movie is to be that bitch. That's the message that they wrote a script that's telling girls, I don't need nobody tells me I'm a 20-year-old girl, so obviously I should run my mouth all the time.
With Snow White, let's go through this, right? Oh, there's no prince. Woman doesn't need a prince.
Oh, Lord.
Really? Okay, good luck back then.
Did you see the movie? A fake academic who's talking to her, and he's like a fake woke guy with like a fake ponytail. And, you know, he gets her to say the most ridiculous shit.
The reason, because why would these people sit here and used to say about the Daily Show, why would they sit there and be on the thing? And he goes, oh, they're aware, but they want the plug. Do you understand? Their demographic wants to see them stupid.
This was supposed to be Disney's next guaranteed hit, a beloved fairy tale, a timeless IP, a fresh, modern twist. Big names were attached. RachelZegler, Gal Gadot, and with Disney's marketing machine behind it, the live-action Snow White should have soared, but it didn't. Not even close. What happened next became one of the most chaotic promotional implosions in recent Hollywood history, and it all started with a press tour that veered wildly off script.
That was crazy, right?
The script was
Wait a
screwed
minute,
from
how
the
much
start.
did this cost? They should get Doge looking at this movie.
It's just so stupid. Like, of course you do. It doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
But imagine you spend $250 million and you get some young girl and you don't kind of talk to her about like, hey, you know, don't get political. You're young. And I know you have opinions about things, but this should be just about the movie.
And I get it, there's a difference between spoiling and whatever, but to go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, I mean, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control over that.
From the moment RachelZegler was announced as the lead, reactions were split. Some praised the casting, others were skeptical. Still, the excitement outweighed the concern. At first, but when clips of Ziegler during early interviews started circulating, something shifted. The actress spoke openly about disliking the original 1937 film, calling the prince character weird, and rejecting what she viewed as outdated themes. For Disney purists, it felt like a betrayal. For Disney, it felt like a PR nightmare just beginning. JoeRogan, in a podcast segment that quickly went viral, broke it down like this. You can't put a modern, opinionated star into a corporate PR machine and expect no friction.
People that would sit down and work through things with the understanding that free speech is like one of the most important aspects of communication possible, and communication is everything. Communication is how we work things out. Like
now, if you notice the spin on it, they're putting it all on her. I mean, I'm sure she sucks, but she is very young. How
she's
about
a kid, right?
She didn't write that script though, right? And I don't think she made the no dwarves decisions. That was Sir Peter Dinklage.
Ziegler's comments weren't just off message. They were gasoline on a fire. Disney had built its brand on nostalgia and family-friendly storytelling. Suddenly, the lead actress was being accused of mocking the very material she was supposed to celebrate. It wasn't that she spoke her mind, it was that the tone clashed so jarringly with the studio's image. Then came the contrast. While Ziegler was everywhere, trending on Twitter, going viral on TikTok, Gal Gadot barely addressed the controversy. She released a few routine statements and kept her head down. Rogan pointed this out as a strategic choice.
That's the theme of the new Snow White.
No, really?
Yes. Now
it's not the same story?
No. So now they've put it all on her. Now they've failed. Here's what happened. She made the cardinal error of saying free Palestine on Twitter. So she could say all that men are bad and it's this and that, but once you do that, now they've put the entire weight of the failure upon her.
Your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Gadot didn't add fuel to the fire. She didn't engage, and in doing so, she came off as calm, collected, and professional. Everything the media frenzy claimed, Ziegler wasn't. But this also created a vacuum. No synergy between the two leads. No united front. If there was a single moment where it all truly imploded, it was the meltdown on The View. This wasn't just a PR hiccup. It was a live, real-time collapse of Disney's entire strategy. According to multiple sources, RachelZegler was scheduled for a high-profile interview segment alongside Gal Gadot. The stage was set. The audience was seated. The cameras were ready. And then chaos.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
Ziegler reportedly walked off moments before going live. No clear explanation, no last-minute substitution, just gone. What followed was a scramble. Loopy Goldberg, Behar, and Sunny Hostin were left with dead air and rising panic. Viewers at home never saw the segment, but the story spread fast. Eyewitnesses backstage reported raised voices, tense exchanges, and a Disney rep trying desperately to regain control. The meltdown didn't need footage. In the age of instant media, all it took were tweets and Reddit posts for the story to go viral. Within minutes, hashtags like #Snow White Meltdown and #Disney Disaster were trending across platforms.
And you get some young girl and you don't kind of talk to her about like, hey, don't get political. You're young. And I know you have opinions about things, but
Rogan, recounting it on his podcast, said it was one of the most surreal collapses in modern Hollywood PR. He emphasized how dangerous it is when a live promotional appearance turns into a spectacle. You can't edit it, you can't spin it, you can't delete it. The public devours every rumor, every secondhand account, and every leak. And in this case, the silence from Disney and Ziegler only amplified the drama. Why did she walk off? Was it nerves, protest, conflict with producers? The absence of a clear narrative let speculation run wild. And in 2025, that's the kiss of death. Once the meltdown hit the public, Disney found itself in a crisis with no easy exit. What began as a few off-brand remarks in early interviews had now evolved into a full-blown public relations wildfire. And here's the brutal truth Rogan kept returning to. Disney had no contingency plan for a situation like this. Their system is built on control, on clean, rehearsed statements, tightly choreographed appearances, and messaging that reflects their carefully curated brand. But Ziegler didn't play by those rules. She didn't want to smile and wave through questions she didn't believe in. And while that might be commendable in a personal sense, Rogan pointed out how it completely undermined Disney's approach. Studios like Disney don't just promote movies. They promote experiences, legacies, emotions. When the lead actor seems to mock the source material, it fractures the illusion. It creates dissonance between what the studio wants the audience to feel and what the star is telling them to think. And once the narrative fractures, everything else becomes damage control. Disney pulled back on interviews, they cut promos. Behind the scenes, executives reportedly debated whether Ziegler should be removed from the press tour entirely. But that wasn't the fix. The real damage was already done. The audience had lost trust. They felt pandered to. They felt like they were being sold a story even the people making it didn't believe in. And that, according to Rogan, is where Disney failed most spectacularly. Let's talk about fans because they're not passive. Not anymore. Today's fandoms are sharp, organized, emotional, and loud. And in the case of Snow White, many felt betrayed before they ever saw a single frame of the film. Why? Because this wasn't just a remake. It was supposed to be their remake. A nostalgic return to something sacred. And what they got instead, in their view, was an actress tearing down a story they loved, while the studio smiled and nodded. From that point on, every trailer, every tweet, every promotional poster was met with skepticism. Ziegler's remarks, calling the prince a stalker, dismissing romance as outdated, were interpreted as an attack on the fairy tale itself. Fans began questioning why Disney had greenlit such a tone-deaf adaptation. Was the company ashamed of its own history? Were they trying to erase the charm and wonder that made Snow White a classic in the first place? Rogan touched on this emotional backlash in depth. He said when fans feel disrespected, their disappointment quickly turns into outrage. And that outrage spreads like wildfire. Petitions to recast the lead began circulating. Boycotts were organized, comment sections became battlegrounds, and suddenly the conversation wasn't about the film, it was about betrayal. When your audience feels like the people making the movie don't like the movie, there's no recovery. The emotional contract is broken. Disney tried everything to wrest control of the conversation back, polished press releases, carefully worded damage control statements, a noticeable shift in tone from remaining interviews. The studio even rolled out behind-the-scenes featurettes, highlighting the film's craftsmanship and production value. But it all landed flat. Why? Because audiences today are hyper aware. They can feel when something's scripted. They can tell when a celebrity is repeating lines approved by corporate. And the more they tried to package Ziegler's interviews, the more inauthentic it felt. On shows like The Tonight Show and Good Morning America, her answers suddenly seemed robotic, safe, practiced, and that, ironically, only made things worse. Rogan said modern viewers are allergic to spin. They crave realness. So when a star who was previously outspoken suddenly becomes media trained to the point of sounding like an AI chatbot, people notice, and they don't trust it. What's worse, the absence of transparency made the backlash feel earned. Instead of addressing the criticisms head-on, Disney kept deflecting. And Ziegler, now visibly uncomfortable in every appearance, seemed trapped between personal conviction and contractual obligation, between her own voice and the studio's approved one. The result? Viewers tuned out. They stopped engaging. They stopped caring. And when the audience checks out emotionally, there's no marketing campaign in the world that can bring them back. There's even speculation that Disney may dump the film early onto streaming platforms, cut their losses, and move on. A theatrical bomb would be brutal. And continuing to pour money into promotion for a project surrounded by bad press? Even worse. Rogan guessed that Bob Iger and his team might quietly shift their focus to future remakes. But this would be quietly buried. A lesson in what not to do when dealing with legacy IP, rising stars, and a social media-fueled news cycle. So what's the takeaway here? It's not just that Snow White flopped, it's why it flopped. A studio that underestimated fan attachment. A lead actor whose convictions clashed with her corporate obligations. A press strategy that unraveled live on national TV. It was a perfect storm. And for anyone paying attention, it was also a masterclass in how fast things can go south when nobody's on the same page. Rogan called it a cautionary tale, and he's right, because now, anytime a major studio plans a remake, you can bet someone in the room is going to ask, is this another Snow White?